Hey gang, welcome back to the channel. My name's Nicky V. I'm a studio musician and producer here in Nashville. I always ask the comments section what you guys would like me to cover, and something that started popping up about 6 months ago because I started mentioning in videos is pre-production. And what is pre-production? Why do you do it? What is it exactly? And I thought this would be a good opportunity to cover that. I'm on a tracking session today that I'm producing, and I'll figure I'd walk you through everything I do before I walk into tracking. To make sure that we're basically creating the environment we need to succeed, which is what basically pre-production is. So what exactly goes into pre-production varies depending on the project and style and all that. But for this week, for example, it's a very singer-songwritery, very acoustic and vocal-based music. And so I actually did all of the acoustics ahead of time, and some of them will get replaced if it's more groove-oriented. If I'm doing like a pop project, I might go ahead and program some of the risers into the choruses, or if there's a percussion loop going through the verse, I might go ahead and program that as well. Just so when we get to tracking, there's a little bit more there structure-wise we can lean on. And it goes back to basically having something inspiring to play to. There's a few common things that I tend to try to have covered every time I walk into a session. Two of the big ones are key and tempo and arrangement. We'll take it three. Tempo sometimes will change though once you get everybody in the room and the band starts playing. Everybody gets a feel for it. Man, does it feel slow? I don't know. It feels 2 clicks fast, and you slow it down a little bit. So sometimes that'll change everything. And then a lot of your pre-production will go out the window. But arrangement and key are pretty much worked out pretty solid before I get there every time. Definitely the key. And most people don't spend enough time on the key. And they'll bring a songwriter in on a demo session or something like that. It'll be trying to rush them in and out the door. Like, yeah, man, go ahead and play it for us. And they sit down, they play it in G, and somebody charts it out. The session leader does real quick, and they play it. And through the cover of great musicianship, it gets done, and it sounds great, and they're happy, and they leave. But the problem is they go on the back end, and they go to cut their vocal, and they realize that, okay, this is slightly too low for my range or slightly too high for my range. Once a vocal producer or someone that knows what they're doing gets in there, and it's like, hey, start singing this. And they get to the top of the chorus, and they're straining to hit certain notes, like, oh, we should have dropped this a half step. Well, the singer-songwriter came in the first place and they just played it in G because that's the only position they knew how to play it in, or something like that. And the time wasn't given on the front end to really sit down and figure out that singer's range, where the song sits best for them to sing, so you don't have a problem you have to solve on the back end, which is re-recording certain instruments or trying to pitch shift things down, which gets funky up when it comes to audio. So figure out the key ahead of time is huge for me. I always do that. Arrangements and tempos are pretty important too, but those are subject to change once you get there with everybody kind of getting a feel for things. The other common denominators that I like just as far as prep work goes is I always have a scratch vocal and some harmonic instrument playing something so on the grid. When I say on the grid, I mean perfectly in time. So whenever we're listening to it, the engineer can play session markers. And I did this ahead of time here, so I'll turn this around here in a second and show you what I'm talking about. But basically what I do is they send me a demo, I chop it up and try to scoot it around to where it's in time on the grid, and then I strip the vocal off it. So I have a scratch vocal that's relatively kind of in time or pocketed. And then most of the time I'll go back and I'll re-record a scratch acoustic over it, just so we have something. If we don't have an acoustic guitar player on the session, usually I'm the only guy. It's nice having acoustic for inspiration whenever we're playing down the track. And talking about inspiration, the whole point of doing a lot of this pre-production, other than being efficient when you get to the session, is to inspire the musicians when you're going down. And the advantage of me being a guitar player when I'm producing is there's a number of advantages to that, whether it's doing overdubs on the back end and having more time for that, or being able to cover acoustic and electric and all that. But one of the big things is whenever everybody's playing down the track, guitar tends to be a very stacked instrument. We'll put multiple layers on the song to make it big and huge and decorate it. Well, I'll do a lot of that decoration ahead of time just so everybody has something inspiring to rock along with whenever we're basically taking our first take. Because what'll happen is everybody's sitting in the control room. If I didn't do this, you'd be listening to one layer of electric guitar, keys, bass, and drums, which can sound big, but not as big as a full dead done mix. And so you do the first one down and you can see the look in the artist's face. They're like, oh my gosh, that's so empty. And then, they wait 45 minutes and it starts to fill out. But it's nice giving them that initial, dopamine hit of, oh, this sounds great, fresh out of the chute. So that's why I do a lot of that. And I'll show you some of this here as well. And then the other one is I always charting out way ahead of time. I never chart out on the session. If I'm producing, if there's a lot of the time people operate differently than that. You'll go to a tracking session, a singer plays the song, and then the session leader charts it. And a lot of the times I'm in that position as well. But if I'm producing, I like having all this done way ahead of time, just because it saves time there. I don't want to be ironing these things out on the session when we're paying per hour at the studio. I want to get all that done on my own time and not rushed, because nobody does good work when they're rushed typically. So I have all the charts printed out way ahead of time too. Another thing to mention, all of this is done a week or weeks ahead of time, if I can. Sometimes stuff comes in last minute and you just have to make it work, but I'm not a fan of musical emergencies, and so I do my best to avoid that situation. So the tracking session today, we're doing 6 songs, and I had all this recorded, done, worked out a week ago. And I didn't have a ton of time before that, but I went ahead and did it so I wouldn't have the stress level today, because the last thing I want to be doing today is worrying about arrangements and keys and scrambling. I want to try to create something beautiful and that's, you know, musical and tasteful and all the good things that we like in music, and not be worrying about, you know, are my charts printed, or my printer running out of ink, you know, stupid stuff like that happens. So I'll turn this around and show you what I'm talking about. So we got 6 songs right here. It's for Emily Jocelyn, and you guys need to go follow her. She's getting ready to put out some amazing music, and she's just an insanely talented songwriter. I'm probably gonna do a session video on her today as well and post it later on once the songs come out, but I'll click on this one for now. Okay, so on this song, I was sent a demo, and thankfully she's a pro and her boyfriend's a great guitar player, so they actually recorded everything on the grid. And so I had basically a really good demo with well put together guitar parts. Arrangement wise, it was pretty much where it needed to be. They're very musical, so I didn't have to do a ton of fixing on it. Everything was recorded on the grid, and that's hugely helpful for me. And so I just used a stem splitter, pulled the vocal off, charted everything out. And so here's the chart for this song. And I make sure that all of my session markers up here at the top match this, because when we get to tracking, they're gonna pull this into Pro Tools, and the chart needs to be able to match their markers. So when we're communicating on the session, everybody's on the same page, literally. And on this song, for example, let me get it back in my head. Yeah, it's kind of like a little strummy acoustic thing. So this will probably get replaced once we get drums down, because if a song is more groove oriented, then obviously it's better to cut acoustic to the groove later. But this is just for everybody to listen down to it. And I put a few. So I wanted that little melody in there happening on guitar. And so I put a few electrics here. And the reason I did that is because that's gonna be very nice and inspiring for everybody when we're going down on tracking. And obviously I could record that at the session, but it's nothing that's, you know, gonna be heavily influenced by the drum pattern or anything. And so it might end up staying on the final mix as well. And then I'll be adding a bunch of other electrics to this when we get there. And like I said, this acoustic will probably get replaced as well. But I got my session markers in, a few electrics. I have a fantastic scratch vocal that's on the grid. It's got some harmony on it already as well, so that's just nice to listen to. It sounds like you're playing to a finished mix whenever you're recording it. And what I take with me for every song is I have 2 bars of click out front. Sometimes it's an eighth note click, sometimes it's a quarter note click. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, pick up. Then we're in on the intro. And this gives everybody time to kind of get settled, hear the count off, and I always make sure that it's 2 bars, so anytime people are used to working with me, they know they're gonna hear 8 clicks out front before the downbeat of the intro. And this is a big one that people don't think about a lot of the time, but I always make sure that the click cuts off at the right time as well. Because right there's a little bit of a rit on this, and I don't want everybody being pulled by that click. I want everybody to musically be able to feel that ending together. And another thing is, I don't want headphone bleed into the microphone. If I got an acoustic guitar on this, or she's cutting her vocal to the click, there's no reason to have click right here, or kind of trailing off at the end, which is what happens a lot of the time. Then in your mix, later on when you go to mastering, the levels get brought up and that's not cool. After that, I put everything into a Dropbox link, and I send it to the engineer, which today is Wes. So I sent him this. This has a folder for all 6 songs in it. Here's Stargazing, the one we just looked at. So I have an acoustic guitar file, I have the chart, I have the click, I have the electrics, I have a listening file, which is kind of just a rough mix for everybody to listen to when we're getting a feel for the song, and then the scratch vocal isolated. I put all this on a hard drive as well and take with me as a backup. So I have this, sometimes I send the Dropbox link because some engineers like to go ahead and put session markers in before we get to the session just to get ahead of things. And this gives them the option, but it's not really a pressuring them to do it kind of thing. And then I obviously take everything on a hard drive. And then at the end of the session, they pull all the files and stamps back onto the hard drive for me. And like I said, we have printed off charts as well. And we use cardstock, and I'll show you why. This is just a stupid nitpicky thing, but if you hold it up to the light, you don't get as much bleed through. And so if you have a transparent music stand, it makes reading the numbers easier and everything's not bleeding through the back of it. Stupid little thing, but it's a dumb little detail, but I think it's important. We'll look at one more song while we're here. Let's pull up Jacket. The song's beautiful. So a track like this, I intend on keeping all of these acoustics actually in the final mix. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's very built around the vocal and the acoustic. So there's really no reason to recut this because there's no little nuance and feel and pocket with a drum groove that's going to influence what would happen on the back end with the acoustic guitar. So this is probably going to end up staying in the final mix. And so I put a lot of time into it. I made sure that it's all very clean, dead on the grid, obviously, because we're going to be tracking to it. And it's in an alternate tuning, and I wanted to use 2 different acoustics. I have a 1934 Martin on it with old strings and a German parlor from the 20s, and it kind of sounds like this. So it just has like this really nice kind of warm hug feel about it, you know? Bring the vocal in. Once again, the vocal's all on the grid. I put this little detail here on the acoustics. Go here. So just kind of mimicking the vocal melody. I put some background vocals on it, which I'm going to spare you guys. That's going to get replaced by Emily later, but it's just kind of a counterpoint idea I thought would be nice on this instrumental section, setting up the bridge. And so I'm basically ironing out the arrangements. Clicks are all here as well at the top. Like I said, you cut the click off at the end. And as I said earlier, you know, if it's a pop thing or if it's a rock deal, you know, I'll be stacking electric guitars on the choruses maybe just so it sounds a little bigger when we hit the choruses, things like that. Just for this specific session, you know, it's very acoustic, vocal oriented. This is kind of the approach I would take for pre-production. This sets us up to be in a good spot when we walk in the door today at 10 o'clock. And speaking of that, I probably need to get rolling. So I know that that's not the most thrilling of topics to cover, right? File management and where to cut your click off and basically record acoustic guitars vary on the grid and things like that are maybe not the most interesting subject to talk about or crazy flashy solos, but this is the kind of stuff that pros do. And everybody has a different version of this too. So like some people don't do any, they just get there and they wing it. And then some people do way more intensive pre-production than what I'm doing right here. This is just what works for me and my team. And I feel like it gets great results without putting anybody in a stressful situation when we walk in the door. So if there's any singer-songwriters or artists or producers out there that need music recorded, all you have to do is hit that link down in the description and it takes you to my website, nashvilletracking.com. And we walk through the whole process. All the pricing's there, so we try to be as transparent as we can with everything. And we'd love to hear what you send us. And I have a great group of guys that I really appreciate. They're all super kind-hearted, and I've said this before, and I'm gonna say it probably every video. There's too many really great people in this town and great musicians to work with people that aren't that kind. So everybody that's working on these tracks has a heart of gold on them. Appreciate you guys checking this video out. Like I said, I know it wasn't the most fun one, but if you're watching this, you're doing the right stuff, guys. This is the stuff the pros do. Appreciate you.